Instant Pot, everybody's new favorite appliance. And this is actually my favorite way of making beef stock. It's just so fast, it's so easy, the smell is contained, you can plug it in a different room and not have to worry about it, and it doesn't heat up the house as much as the slow cooker. I tend to take 1 or 2 days a week and do most of our cooking, so it's not uncommon for me to be doing chicken stock or beef stock, yogurt, maybe a batch of homemade Laura bars or meatballs or something meat-based to kind of prepare for the next few days. So I tend to do my cooking in sort of blocks, which is why I have my freezer class, which I will link to above if you want to check it out, where we do blocks of 2 to 6 to 8 hours of cooking, and then we fill our freezer so that we don't have to worry about cooking from scratch every single night, every single meal. So I will link to that above. So stock is easy to just go ahead and set up and then let it do its thing while you get other stuff done. So to make our stock, these are beef bones, they're marrow bones. You can see, sometimes they're called shank bones or soup bones. You can see the marrow right in there, and then there's lots of fatty meat around the outside. This makes really delicious stock. You can actually do this exact same thing with chicken, and I tend to use the cheaper cuts of chicken when I'm making stock. I'll use like the wings or the drumsticks or kind of whatever I can find free range, organic, and less expensive. With chicken, you're going to want to leave the skin on, so you want bone in, skin on. And then for beef, these nice soup bones work super well. They make a really delicious, nourishing stock that's full of all those amino acids, fats, and is super easy to digest, healing. I think all of you guys know the benefits of stock. So we're not going to go into that now. You can look at my other video, Broth and Stock 101, to learn a little bit more of the benefits of making stock. And the second thing I add to my stock is different kitchen scraps. So I tend to sort of accumulate kitchen scraps, like onion peels make a nice golden stock. These are just some like wilty ends of lettuce that didn't make it into a salad. There's some garlic peels. I think there's a few carrot ends in here. So just kind of kitchen scraps are great for stock. You're gonna wanna have them washed though, so make sure you're not putting anything in that's really dirty, because that will make dirt in your stock, which of course we don't want. So clean kitchen scraps, I tend to just save for a few days before I'm making stock. The rest of it goes into the compost. This adds actually vitamins and minerals to your stock and different flavors. It kind of makes a nice deep flavor. And the onion peels especially make it a nice golden color. Next, what we add to stock is salt. And so I tend to add a little bit of salt because it does help preserve the stock and keep it from going bad in the fridge. If you have it in the fridge for a little while waiting to use it. We use unrefined sea salt, but I tend to undersalt my stock so that if I'm boiling it down and simmering it down to make a sauce, it doesn't concentrate the salt flavor. So I like to add salt to the finished product of soup or sauces or whatever I'm using the stock in, rather than adding it to the stock up front. The last things that we add to stock, and this is completely optional, is ginger and garlic. And both of these have healing properties, and they really add a nice subtle flavor to the stock. I like to you don't even have to peel it. Just cut off about 1 inch or 1.5 inches of ginger, or if you bought a ginger root and it started to get kind of wrinkly and like dehydrated in your fridge, go ahead and like give it a sniff and make sure it still smells good. But if it smells good, go ahead and just toss it in your stock just like that. And it will impart the flavor and some of the healing properties of ginger into your stock. And it just really gives it a nice, slightly spicy, subtle flavor. It's a great anti-inflammatory, and it's great for lots of other things. So ginger is a great thing to add to your stock if you have it on hand. Garlic, for the same reasons, a nice, subtle, sweet, earthy flavor. Garlic is great to put in stock. It's high in sulfur, which helps our detoxification pathways. And so there's just lots of healing benefits to stock. It's really essentially made of kitchen scraps. Those beef bones are inexpensive. Vegetable scraps, of course, were free. They came with vegetables we've already used. Ginger and garlic both are incredibly inexpensive, and you probably have them on hand in your kitchen. So here we're just gonna go ahead and get started now, and you're gonna see this is an incredibly simple process. You're gonna love having this nourishing, highly nourishing, inexpensive food in your kitchen as a staple. So to make beef stock in the Instant Pot, we're just gonna open it. We have just a plain pot in here, and then we're gonna turn it to saute and normal. And we're gonna put 2 of these marrow bones in, and we are just going to let them brown, and then we're gonna flip them over, brown them on the other side, and that just gives a little bit more rich of a flavor, and it gives it a little bit more color in our finished stock. Now we don't add any vegetables until after our meat is brown. So we're just browning the meat in there, and that's gonna take about 5 to 10 minutes on each side. These are about as brown as we need them to be, and we don't need to flip them again. We can just leave them right in the bottom. We're gonna add some more of our veggie scraps. And then crushed garlic and a slice of ginger. And then I just removed the whole pot. It's not hot yet there, just check and use a pot holder if you need to fit under where my water filter is. And we're just gonna fill it until it's a little bit below the max line and put it in our Instant Pot. Put all those good veggies in there, put on our lid. Make sure our vent is set to sealing, and then we are going to go manual for 90 minutes. So we're gonna let the pressure release naturally from here. You can use a quick release if you're in a hurry, but I tend to just let it sit and naturally come down in pressure. And then we're just gonna take the lid off. And I like to run it through a colander first, and then I'm going to save this meat to use again. I'm going to poke the marrow out of the bone and put it back in with the chicken stock, and it can be blended up in soups or just blended into the chicken stock for any use that you use it for. It's incredibly nourishing and good for everybody, easy to digest, and a very healing food. And then after I've poured the chicken stock out, I'm gonna discard all the veggie scraps, save our meat and our bone, and I actually just put them in a freezer bag and put them in the freezer after they've cooled. And then we can reuse those for at least one more batch of stock. It's not gonna be as nutrient dense as the first batch was, but it's a great way to get some extra nutrition out of those bones and that meat. And I'm going to pour the stock into mason jars. Sometimes I'll reduce the stock down if I'd like to have less stock to have to store, but for right now we're just going to use it as is. And to each of these 1 quart mason jars, I'm going to add a teaspoon of sea salt. That's not heavily salted. It's not going to, if we reduce our stock into a sauce, it's not going to be way too salty, but it does help preserve, give a longer shelf life to the stock in the fridge. And then once we've sealed the jars, yes, we are using mason jars, but no, they are not shelf stable. We go ahead and keep them in the refrigerator. And I keep them for about, usually I try to use up my stock within 2 weeks. I would guess they probably last about 3 in the refrigerator. I've never actually had a jar of stock go bad. But if you need it to last longer than that, I would recommend simmering it down, adding a little gelatin, and storing it as broth cubes in the freezer, which I can link to another video where I show you how to do that.